Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So, taking another fun and random episode of you guys this evening because the SegaXtreme Homebrew Jam competition is going on right now, and I was sent all the games in advance to check out and see what ran on MiSTer FPGA. While I would have loved to have featured every single game I received in this video, I narrowed it down to my two favorites. That's not to say that the rest of them are not impressive in their own right, these are just the two that really stuck with me as far as things I would love to see finished and released as quote-unquote retail Saturn games. And right off the top, CubeCat just absolutely charmed me when I started playing it, and I had so much fun with this title. Obviously, it's a 3D platform where it gets very challenging in later areas, and I really do like that they balance that cute, whimsical nature of the environments along with some deep gameplay that actually has some precision platforming going on. And as you can tell already, this is just a bright, happy game. The overall story is this is basically Yarn World, and it gives me some Yoshi's Woolly World vibes, but having this cat just run around the area is so much fun. It does have some toggles for draw distance as well. In the distance, you can kind of have the vanishing point of what's being rendered further or closer to you depending on how the engine can keep up. But I will say, as a fan game, as a homebrew game, the 3D engine here, the overall 3D aspect really does feel very close to a finished Saturn product. There was a platformer on the Saturn featuring a penguin, and this reminds me definitely of that. But this is just amazing to see. It's wild to think one person created this game in their spare time on the Sega Saturn. This feels really close to something that would have come out back in the day. And you'll see here our cat also has this suspended in mid-air forward burst of energy, which is going to be such an important part of the overall platforming, and that's why I actually really love this game. It seems so simple off the top. When you actually get into the movement mechanics and everything else that actually makes CubeCat work, you realize that there's a lot of depth in this game. Now, because it's unfinished, it's not going to hold your hand and explain any of the concepts. Anything like those pink diamonds or any red squares you'll see later in the game, you have to charge into them to get a boost in your height. That took me about a minute there, but obviously being unfinished, that's not too big of a deal. And I love these rat enemies as well. You can charge them, knock them around, and they kind of look like chess pieces just walking back and forth. I love that everything in this game is cube related. Not only does it allow for the Sega Saturn to render this at a very high frame rate, but it also works aesthetically. It was a very smart choice to have these cube-shaped characters because it requires less polygons to actually render, and technically those are quads, but I'm going to continue to say polygons for Sega Saturn until the end of time. And I love how creative the game can be in the levels as well. You need to get this giant yarn ball, push it past this hole in the ground so you don't lose it, and bounce it all the way to the end of the level so that you can actually get the collectible and move on with the game. It's a really nice mechanic, and I would love to see more of this in the game. It almost feels like a cat version of Monkey Ball, where you have to get your Monkey Ball to the end of the arena, except here obviously it is cat related. But it does work, and it is fun, and it's so much fun to see another 3D platformer on the Sega Saturn, because it was not exactly a genre that was flush with a lot of games when the Sega Saturn was new on the market. But you'll see here we can bounce on that yarn ball, we get the sacred stitch, and we're able to move on with the game. And I 100% want to see this game finished. I want like 12 to 14 CubeCat areas. I want to be able to run around this world. I want this to be like an 8 to 12 hour experience. It's the type of thing that if they pressed us on this, I would pay $50 to $60 if it was a fully fleshed out game. And like I said earlier, the platforming does get very intense in this title as well, and I actually love that. It is hard enough that it challenges you, but not so cheap that you're going to be driven nuts by it. But as we get to this tree level here, this is where the platforming really steps up, and you're going to have to use that charge mechanic pretty much every single jump, as well as kind of navigate yourself in that 3D space. And you will see here we have a fully rotatable camera as well, but you need to charge again into that red block and be able to get that extra burst of speed, which is a really fun mechanic for a 3D platformer. Now, if there's one thing I would love to see improved in the next build, is some of these platforms can be a little bit too small to actually get CubeCat to turn around and look in the direction you actually want to make that jump. I feel like if this platform here was maybe 25% bigger on all sides, it would still allow for the challenge in the platforming without giving you a little bit of trouble when you're actually trying to turn in the game. But the nice thing is, after pretty much every single hard jump, there is a checkpoint, so if you fall down to the ground, you're not going to lose all of your progress. And of course, a game this colorful, this cute, and this cubic has a great soundtrack as well. Go ahead and listen for like 25 to 30 seconds, and I'll be right back with some more Sega Saturn fun. super fun soundtrack, and the game just played a very cruel trick on all of us. If you don't make that final jump, you hit a checkpoint underneath a log, which basically puts you at the bottom of the tree. It's a really nice trolly way to say you gotta try all over again. Now moving on to something not bright, not colorful, and not cheery is Cold Case. This is basically Silent Hill meets Twin Peaks, the television show, and it does a lot of fun things atmospherically that really flex the power of the Sega Saturn. Every single thing you see here is in 3D. This is not a pre-rendered game. You have a 3D character model with 3D walls, 3D ceilings, and it really is showing the overall power of what the Sega Saturn can do when it is in developers' hands who understand how to get the best out of the hardware. Even the inventory is going to be in full 3D, and you can see some of the stats as to how many different polys are rendering at once, what your frame rate is with the push of a button. This is not very story featured right now. It seems to be a tech demo with a little bit of story as far as the environments are concerned, and this definitely has a lot of Silent Hill 4 The Room vibes going on here. It wears its inspiration on its sleeve, but I love this pseudo reflection right there. If you actually examine the mirror, you end up in what seems to be the Silent Hill version of this game's world. That is a very dirty bathroom, does not seem like a place you would want to be whatsoever. But this is just impressive that this is all running on Sega Saturn in real time, all in 3D, and it does have combat as well. That enemy definitely escaped the confines of the room, but again, this is still just a demo. This is not a finished product, but it's another game I would love to see finished on Sega Saturn for everyone to enjoy, because it does have a very interesting universe. I want to know what's going on more in the game world, and I want to see more levels, more enemies, and more features added in the future. Because all of this in real-time 3D is just something you didn't see a ton of on the Sega Saturn. You'll see we can skip around to level 2. The one thing that you can't do yet, at least I couldn't figure out how to do, is to automatically reload your weapon. You have to go into your inventory, and you have to select the bullets to make sure that your firearm actually has that ammo you need to fight enemies. But honestly, in some areas, just like Silent Hill, not fighting the enemies is the smarter thing. And you get a photograph in your apartment, and you need to examine that. That will warp you to the church, which is the second level I was able to access in this demo. The draw distance might not be as good as CubeCat, but it definitely seems like it's rendering a lot more quads at once, because we do have fully featured environments. When you get into the church here, you find another enemy, and I love when you aim, you get this pseudo first person mode. It plays around with the camera sometimes. You'll see in just a moment as I let this enemy go a little bit further back. But again, this is just really impressive tech demo stuff, and it's married to a very intriguing game concept. I want to know what's going on in the world of this game. I want more story. I want to understand exactly what's gone wrong in the world of Cold Case and find out what's coming next. It does have a little bit of perspective funniness as you walk into those church pews. You seem to get taller or shorter, but it does work in the context of the power that the Sega Saturn could provide. And it's so fun to see modern developments on this old hardware we all know and love so much. Now that we got that shotgun, we can pop back here, and we need to find the tower key, and you'll see that monster comes out of the grave. But now that we have the shotgun, they're basically one-hit kills. It's just, again, so atmospheric. You see that pseudo lighting effect on the wall as you walk around the game world. This kind of reminds me of another game that doesn't technically exist. That would be Agartha on the Sega Dreamcast. There are some tech demos and some alphas out there, but it never released. And this game gives me a lot of the same vibes in some ways. And you'll see here as we ascend this tower, we're going to find a new character design monster up top, which I think looks absolutely spectacular in Sega Saturn hardware. Would not look out of place whatsoever in a Silent Hill game. When you defeat the enemies, there really isn't any death animation. They just disappear off the screen, and you'll see here that we get an office key, but in my entire time with this game, I have never been able to find a door that it opens. Maybe it's not in the build, maybe I just missed it. I tried not to read too much about these things before I started testing them. I wanted to go in with a fresh mind and kind of look at what's happening in the homebrew scene on the Sega Saturn side. Trying to get down the ladders is quite difficult, but I'm sure that will improve in future builds. And again, I want to see these two games finished. I want to see everything in the homebrew competition finish, but these were the two that really intrigued me, caught my attention, and made me wonder what else could be done with Sega Saturn in these two games. CubeCat and Cold Case is funny. They both have the same letter alliteration, and those are the two that I gravitated the most towards in this video. But yeah, definitely check these two games out. Check the entire competition out. There's a lot of other fun stuff like a Pico 8 emulator built into Sega Saturn in code. It's so impressive to see what people could do with this hardware, and I can't wait to see what they do next year. Sure, that I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.